Hello and welcome to another edition of the Hitting the Hardwood podcast, your home for all the latest Minnesota Lynx and WNBA news, analysis, and coverage. Thank you for tuning into another episode. I'm your host, Mitchell Hansen, and this week I'm thrilled to be joined by Alexa Philippou, who covers women's basketball for ESPN. Alexis, thank you for joining. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's good to come on and chat some hoops.
Yeah. If before we dive into things, I wanted to open things up to you to let people know where they can find all your work, whether it's social media or online. So feel free to kind of plug that and where people can find all your work.
Sure. Well, I guess ESPN.com/WNBA for the W season. I'll be having all my work up there. And then on Twitter, my handle is at Alexa Philippou, Philippou. So I'll always be tweeting stuff out, whether it's game coverage or stories or just interesting observations. Or yesterday, it was just freaking out about the Celtics Heat game. But usually I do keep it mostly about women's basketball and the WNBA. So that's where you can find me.
Yeah, well, good. Thank you. A couple of weeks ago, I had Kevin Pelton on, and he was phenomenal to talk hoops with. That was right before the start of the season, so it's a little bit of a different perspective, but he was great to have on. And I guess I'm making the ESPN rounds. I gotta get Emma Vopel. I gotta keep going down the line and get everybody from ESPN.
I love it. Well, it's hard to follow the act of Kevin Pelton. I admire him and just the way his brain thinks. I think we all have a little bit different ways we look at the game. So sometimes Pelton will do some sort of statistical analysis thing. I'll be like, how did he come up with that? And yeah, he's great. So glad to keep the ESPN train going, and hopefully I can be a good act to follow him up.
It is kind of nice to, like you were talking about, with having a team like that, especially I've noticed that with the ESPN team of, maybe Kevin does a little bit of a, statistical deep dives or maybe, you and M.A. Vopel are doing, kind of different, maybe feature stories or kind of sort of enterprise stories to quote newspaper terms. But it's good to have that balance because you offer fans really everything, or fans or readers or whatever, everything. So it's a good balance to have. And I know, at least for me, when I work with people like that, I learn stuff myself too, which is kind of cool. So it's
yeah. Well, Vopel's been around the game for so long that I just learned so much from him, hearing his perspective on how the league has evolved, or different players or individuals' careers throughout the game. So I feel like Vopel's an encyclopedia, and Pelton has so much of his own knowledge, and I'm just kind of like the newbie, kind of just happy I'm here and trying to take everything in, and hopefully I provide some interesting insight every now and then. But they're awesome, so I'm really fortunate to be able to work with them and be on a team that produces really interesting work, hopefully for readers.
Yeah, you guys do a great job. I know I enjoy all your coverage as well as other people's coverage that they provide with the WNBA. It's a lot of great stuff. So thank you for all you do and the coverage that you do provide.
I appreciate that. And right back at you. It's a good space for us all to be in, and everyone plays a big part in helping grow the game and tell these great stories and cover these games. So it's all good.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive into a little bit of basketball. We have about a little over a week into the regular season here. What are your early thoughts on the season and what we've seen so far in kind of the small sample size, but a little over a week?
I think it's mostly what we expected. When I actually sat down and thought about it, I thought there's no big shockers to me. I think it's more so there's some teams that were maybe better than I thought, because I wasn't sure what to expect with so many new pieces or with a new coach. And we can get into some of those if you want to. But I think for the most part, it's pretty much kind of the distinctions that I had imagined, and probably most fans too. I'm not sure how you feel, but it is also really early, so we have no idea. I mean, some of these teams have only played 2 games. I think, has anyone only played 1? Or I think we're all at the point where, everyone's played at least multiple games.
Yeah.
So it's weird to see, and we always experience this in the season, but some teams I feel like I've seen 4 times, other teams have only played twice. So hopefully that'll eventually, it's going to even itself out regardless. But I am interested to see how teams continue to develop over the course of the summer, and I'm sure there'll be some more surprises thrown our way.
Mm-hmm. I do agree with that, you know, coming into the year, I think a lot of people, when it specifically comes for like New York, I think a lot of people expect them just to come in and just be clicking right away. And, you know, even if you have the top talent like that, it still takes time to gel. And I think that they've hit their stride pretty quickly, or kind of fix things pretty quickly. But I think one of those, you know, those first couple games, it was still kind of a learning process for them. So I think, you know, they're obviously just going to continue to keep getting better. Las Vegas just looks great right now. You know, Connecticut and what was it? Dallas. They've looked, you know, great so far. I mean, I think Connecticut maybe caught me a little bit off guard. And now they're a good team, but I didn't think they would look maybe that strong that early against the caliber of teams that they played. But I do agree that I think that it's kind of what we expected. And I don't know, like you said, it's still early, so it's a really small sample size to be analyzing, but I think that this is kind of the theme we're going to see most of the year. So it's been fun though. It's good to have basketball back. There's a lot of high powered, you know, entertaining offenses, and you know, it's been a fun year so far and a fun slate of games. And we've jumped right into having, you know, some big matchups right away. So that's been fun to see right away as well.
Yeah, no, I would say if I had to pick one team that surprised me the most, it was actually Chicago, because
Yep.
I did not think that they would come together, and they still have some growing pains, but they've relatively come together better than I think a lot of people thought, just because they have a almost entirely new roster, and even within their team, they've had some absences or injuries, and so they're not even at full strength. And I know they actually had two players get hurt in their last game with Rebecca Gardner and Morgan Birch. So I don't know necessarily how they're going to look next time out, because that's really going to hurt their depth. But the fact that they were 2-0, and then they really, oh God, what was that game? The game that they almost won. I'm totally blanking. I remember watching it. The third game, they really like almost came back and won. And I thought it was, I'll look it up right here. That way I actually, it was, they were playing
Washington.
Mystics. Yeah, there's Mystics. So it's a good Mystics team, or a team that we've all been talking about since the beginning of the season was going to be good. And they really fought back, clawed back, and it really took that last minute shot from Elena Deladon for the Mystics to pull away at the end. But I did not necessarily expect the Sky to look as strong as early as they have. And so once they get healthy, hopefully the injuries that they have aren't anything too serious, so that they can have their full roster and we can see what this would really look like. But so far so good, and they've shown some real strength on the defensive end, and they caused a lot of problems in that game against the Mystics. So that was something I was not expecting. So credit to them so far for putting together an interesting first week or so.
Yeah, I do think that, you know, we kind of mentioned Washington. I think that Washington's going to be, you know, when you look at the standings, they're kind of middle of the pack right now. It's still obviously very early, but I think that they're going to be a team that's going to be right up there in the end too, with just, you know, if it, now granted it lies heavily on if Elena Deladon can stay healthy and she can play like she has been playing for the entire season. If that happens, I think they're going to be a talented team that could maybe make a run at one of those top teams. But we've seen almost every team like have a strong stretch so far. Or you've seen, you know, Chicago start off really strong, or Dallas has looked great at moments. Connecticut has looked dominant. You know, they all have had their time. So it's going to be a fun year. I think that maybe this year more than ever we have maybe, you know, those top two teams that people view, you know, Las Vegas, New York, and then it's kind of almost everybody else. And it's interesting to, now you have the teams at the bottom, Minnesota. But it'll be fun to kind of see those teams battle it out in the middle, I think, this year.
Yeah, no, it does feel like that second tier where maybe a lot of people thought the Mystics would be there, potentially the Sun, but now it's like, okay, well, is Dallas going to be in there? How about Chicago and the Sparks? I mean, I know the Aces totally demolished the Sparks yesterday, but that was a semblance of a Sparks team. Like, we can't act like that was, you know, like the Sparks at full strength by any means, because of apparently this illness going around the locker room. So, and they have other players still out due to injury. So yeah, maybe the Sparks too could be part of that. I think that second tier could have maybe like, what is that, 5 teams I just mentioned that are going to really make things interesting come the fall and playoff time.
Mm-hmm. If you could pick, maybe one team that's been at the top for you so far, who would be that team that stood out the most to you?
I feel like obligated to pick the Aces because I mean the way that they've just won games the last week has been something that no other team has been able to accomplish. But I do feel like they haven't totally played a tough schedule yet. Not to say that they're not going to be the final team standing in October, but they played a Storm team that's rebuilding, and they played again a semblance of a Sparks team. So and then when they did play the Sparks like slightly more healthy, that was a little bit more of competitive of a game, and they actually were down for a decent stretch of that contest. So I am eager to see what a New York Aces or even a Mystics Aces regular season game looks like, or Sun Aces regular season game looks like. So I think we still have, maybe we could still say the Aces are the favorites based off just like how they've gone about everything so far. It doesn't seem like incorporating their newcomers has been that much of an issue, but I do think we have to see how they play against tougher competition, and they just haven't, the way the schedule's worked out so far, that hasn't really been something that they've had to worry about, but it's still the Aces. I mean, their point differential that they've won by is pretty insane so far.
Yeah, they were only, the best team in the WNBA, and then they added the likes of, Candace Parker, which is nothing to scoff at. So, and Alicia Clark, like they're just, oh man. They're good. Let's say that. Is there a team or maybe teams at the bottom that has surprised you the other way, where you're kind of surprised that they've struggled so far early on?
I feel like the teams that have been struggling so far was barely no surprises on my end. I think, I mean, we'll obviously dive deeper into Minnesota. I thought maybe it wouldn't be quite as, I don't want to say quite as bad, but I thought maybe it, they've had a really tough first week. I didn't know if it was going to be like that level, but and I think the thing when I look at their schedule is like they have a really tough schedule coming up even. So it's like, why am I going to get that first win? But I don't know if that's necessarily surprising, because we have most of these teams have made it clear that they're either looking ahead towards the future, rebuilding, whatever term you want to use. And then you have a team like maybe Atlanta, who we've just seen 2 games from them at this point. So it's kind of hard to fully, figure out where they stand. So I don't think any major surprises. And then Phoenix, I have been surprised with how great BG has played, because I don't know if anyone expected her to be basically playing like an MVP candidate, but it doesn't seem like they have enough talent around her. Again, they also had some early injuries, but yeah, I'm not sure right now if they have enough talent around her to be able to make a serious push. But obviously, at the end of the day, they're just grateful to have her back into the.
Yeah, it's been awesome to see her back, and like you said, to almost just pick up where she left off. Like she did, she looks great, and it's not only good to see her back, but it's good to see the old BG back, and that's great for everybody. So I know when the Lynx played them the other night, and now this has been every team in the WNBA who's played them, or even just in general, they had nothing but great things to say about her. And I know Cheryl Reeve after the game, before and after the game, had talked about how great it is to see her back. And now Cheryl said she didn't want her to, be the old BG against Minnesota, but I think that's, I don't know. It's okay. It's great to see her back, and the reception that she's received too is kind of cool. So
Definitely.
It's good to see. When it comes to your expectations, and this kind of feeds off of what we just talked about with a team that surprises you, or a team that's at the top with the Aces. When it comes to kind of looking ahead, and now it's hard to look too far ahead because we're just a week plus into the season, but what are your expectations for what we might see at the end? Do you think it will be Las Vegas, New York kind of duking it out, or do you think there might be a surprise team that gets thrown in there?
I feel pretty strongly that New York will still be that team doing it out at the end with the Aces. And it's actually really interesting. I was at the Liberty Sun game yesterday and seeing the Liberty kind of figure out in real time how to work together is something that was really interesting because the first half they weren't playing very well at all. And then they come out in the second half and they actually did it mostly in the defensive end. And I was really impressed by how their bench made an impact. Kayla Thornton was like plus 19, which was absurd. And maybe she's not scoring the most points or coming away with the most rebounds or steals or whatever, but you couldn't have watched that game and not realize the impact she was making in the defensive end. And then you also have a player like Brianna Stewart, who's a great defender. And kind of together, they were able to help turn defense into offense. And then everything kind of kept rolling from there. And so I think their half court offense will only continue to get better. But then also when they're able to get in transition, then watch out because they just have so many weapons. And so I was also left thinking that Niara Sabally looked really good. It was her first WNBA game. I'm interested to see how she can continue to help them out in terms of depth. And then Maureen Johannes is coming back. Mm-hmm. So I feel like this New York team, top to bottom, is going to be the strong. Well, I was about to say the strongest team in the WNBA by the time it's all said and done. And then I was like, well, I don't know if I'm quite ready to go that far, but I do feel like the team that we see in New York right now in late May is going to be so different than the team that we see in September and October. And I think there were some people who were like, oh, like, why are the Liberty struggling so early? And one thing that people probably take for granted or didn't realize was that Courtney Vandersloot barely played in training camp because she got a concussion. Jonquel Jones is coming back from a stress reaction and didn't play a lot in training camp. And she's still not 100%. Even seeing her yesterday, I mean, she was not as impactful as we're used to seeing. So I don't expect that to last, assuming that she's able to heal. And then even Brianna Stewart didn't play a good amount of training camp because they were resting her after her overseas season. So they're kind of learning a lot on the fly, it seems like. And I think that that's only going to benefit them longer term when they have more time together and then they have all their pieces. So I think I said to someone, which might have sounded a little extreme, that if the Liberty had started 0-5, I would not have been fazed. Like I would not have been concerned or like I would not have thought any differently about what I think they can do in the fall. Maybe that was a little extreme, but anyway, they're are they 2-1 now or 3-1? So they put it 2-1. So they're starting off in a good enough foot, and I think you can see the progression from game to game. So
there was a stretch yesterday during their game that it might have been like in the second quarter. Sabrina Ionescu was driving into the lane. She dished out to Brianna Stewart for 3, and then there was a timeout called right afterwards. And Brianna Stewart ran by Sandy Brondello, and you could just tell like Sandy looked at her like, okay, like we got this figured out. Like you could just tell like something was clicking. And I think that once that happens, that's going to be very dangerous for everybody else because they do match up. I mean, Las Vegas is talented, but they do match up well with Las Vegas and being able to kind of counter what they're able to do. So I don't know. I think it'll ultimately be those two top teams. It's kind of like the LA Minnesota days back in the dynasty era of the Lynx, but I think it'll ultimately be those two teams kind of duking it out, and I do think it's going to be phenomenal to watch them play in a series, but we're going to want more than what they have in the series or what they present in the series, but they're so good. But I could see, like I said earlier, I could see maybe a Washington trying to, if EDD is able to stay healthy, maybe they kind of, slow down somebody and maybe they do steal a couple games and they come away with a series win and they're able to make a push. But yeah. I don't know. It'll be fun. I don't want to already be thinking about playoff basketball because I want to enjoy the regular season, but it's awesome to kind of think about that. It's like thinking about March Madness. It's right. You look forward to it, but
Right. Well, just to add a quick note to what you said, my one concern about Washington right now is I think they need more from their backcourt
Hmm.
if they do want to be that surprise team that upends one of these quote unquote super teams. Not to say that that can't change between now and in the fall, but that's been a pretty glaring weakness so far in terms of, um, just like able to help out Shakira Austin and Elena Deladon by providing something else, like, scoring wise. So they have people capable of that, certainly in Sykes and Cloud and Tolliver. But that was like the one thing watching them the last few games, it gave me a little pause. Like, okay, this is going to be like a clear difference of like whether or not they can reach their ceiling is whether or not those guards step up and are able to hit shots. Because so far that hasn't really happened consistently for them. So if they do want to be a surprise team that makes a run to the final, and I say surprise, not to shade them or anything,
Hmm.
but because we're all kind of assuming it's going to be these two super teams.
Right.
So if they do want to make that run, they're going to have to definitely get more from their backcourt.
Hmm. Yeah. When it comes to, you might have already made this before the season, maybe something during the first week kind of changed your mind on this. But when it comes to predictions, do you have maybe one or two kind of quote unquote bold predictions for the year that you think will happen?
I'm not someone who typically likes to give bold predictions
Mhm.
because I'm really boring, to be honest with you. So, I don't know how bold these are, but I I had this like inkling that this could happen, and then after seeing them this past week, I think that this is something I feel comfortable offering as a bold prediction. But my bold prediction would be that the Wings finish top 4 in the standings. I have been really impressed. I will say the thing that could hurt that prediction is that they've had injuries, and so they're not going to get Diamonds and Shields back for a while. And even like Tierra McCown's has been hurt last week a little bit, so maybe the lack of depth comes
Mhm.
back to hurt them. But I think their offense has been really good, better than expected, because I know Latricia Trammell is considered more of a defensive minded coach. So to me, I was thinking like the more, she gets them to embrace her defensive philosophy, they should only theoretically get better on that end of the floor. And if the offense is already this good, then maybe we see them surprise some folks. And, they have this big three, maybe big, I guess it could be a big four. But Enrique's been playing great.
Mhm.
Or no, I need to, it's or her new she kind of corrected people with her pronunciation, but R-E-K, right? Um
I
I'll make
didn't
sure.
know that. Was that
Yeah, no.
recent?
You hear well, I was gonna say you heard it here first, but no.
Oh,
So I guess it's not technically here first, but yeah, it's like A-R-E, like R, like we are, it's like
oh,
R.
sure.
Yeah. So the Wings like tweeted something the other day, and I was like, oh, like uh, we always want to make sure you pronounce players'
Right.
names right. So, anyway, she's been doing great. And I think McCown's gonna have a great season. Natasha Howard's like played really well so far. And Sably, if she can stay healthy, I think is gonna be tremendous. So
Mhm.
Wings top 4 finish would be my bold prediction.
I like that. They can. I mean, their offense can go toe to toe with anybody. They are so fun to watch.
Yeah.
And yeah, if they can just kind of maybe take advantage and lock down teams defensively, they're dangerous. But
Definitely.
yeah, no, I like that. I think that that they're a team. I'm Washington. I mentioned them. They're another team that's, like you said, the quote unquote dark horse. That's like you said, it's not a knock on them, but everybody is talking about Las Vegas and New York. So it's you do have dark horses behind them when everybody's talking about those two as the favorites. But yeah, I like that. I think that they'll be right there in the end. I do think Connecticut's kind of the oddball and kind of the wild card right now. We don't really know what's going to happen with Connecticut or how strong they're going to play, if they're going to continue the strong play. But those three will probably end up duking it out in the middle for most of the year.
Right.
But
I can see that.
um, when it comes to the Lynx, they're not duking it out in the middle. They're not duking it out anywhere but the bottom right now. What are your thoughts on maybe the Lynx that we've seen so far? And the kind of the roster that is constructed in Minnesota and what that's resulted in so far.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to necessarily be surprised, just because I felt like it was very clear from the franchise from the get-go that they were not seeing this as a year where they were going to contend. This was a year that was dedicated towards looking toward the future. So already the expectations were kind of pretty low. And I do feel like in some ways they've had a big problem with putting together a full game, because a lot of the time it's like one quarter or like one half where they play really badly, and then they are able to change things around and they look fine. They're like most of the rest of the way. And, sometimes even like make it close at the end, or it comes down to just like they weren't able to put together a complete game. So in some ways it's like, okay, well, that means there are stretches where you're seeing the promise, but then there are also stretches where things kind of fall apart. I know they haven't had also the easiest time. Obviously Lindsay Allen wasn't there for a game, and Kayla McBride wasn't there for a game. Napheesa Collier is still trying to work her way back. So I think there's a lot of different moving parts of kind of what's going on. I'm really kind of curious to see how this point guard situation continues to develop, or if it just kind of is the way it is, because that's kind of been this like running thing with the Lynx for, I feel like, the last few seasons. Is there, who's playing point guard? Do they have point guard, a true point guard on the roster? And how they're able to work around that, or if it just is like their Achilles heel. So yeah, it's just kind of an interesting mixed bag, but I do feel like if your expectations are really just to try and improve for the long-term growth of the franchise, then there's going to be just different goals that you've set, and it's not necessarily to be contention, but it's going to be, how the youth develop. And they also have some interesting decisions to make this off season. So the Lynx that we see now could look different than the Lynx we see next year, for all we know. So just a really interesting, thinking about how they were, in the playoffs, or even last year, they were really close to making the playoffs. And now it's like very clear that they've entered this new era, and they're looking ahead, and it's not really about making the playoffs or competing for a championship anymore. But that's what also happens when you lose your Hall of Famer and Sylvia Fowles.
Yeah, I know it. I mean, I think you were in the Cheryl preseason. Well, it was prior to the season, not preseason availability, but prior to the season, she had the league had head coaches and meeting with the media before the start of the season. And Cheryl even said in that, she said it all off season, she said it all training camp, she said in that availability that it's on the focus is on the future. It's on the long game, or their focus is on the long game, building around Napheesa Collier. We saw that in the draft. They did try to, and Cheryl has wanted to do this in the past, swing big and get those big name free agents to kind of excel a rebuild and a turnaround. They tried this offseason. That obviously did not happen. But yeah, so I mean it's on the future. It's on. People like to kind of jump to conclusions with what we've seen with Diamond Miller and Dorka Juhász so far, and just kind of maybe the underwhelming performances that they had. But they're rookies. They've only been in the league for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, so it's going to take some time. And we're going to, specifically with Diamond Miller, we're going to see a lot of those ups and downs and roller coaster rides with her. And then when it comes to, like you said, with Napheesa Collier, I think Cheryl Reeve has talked a lot about her needing to be aggressive. And just kind of, she is taking on that leadership role, but now take over the team. Like you go out and, kind of take command of, being the leader of the team and the go-to target for the team. And that's going to take some time too, because she hasn't had to do that yet. So it'll be a learning process for basically everybody, Cheryl included, this season, just to kind of learn about this roster. And to your point too, about the point guard position, I think eventually that's going to end up maybe being Tiffany Mitchell. But I think that, Tiffany Mitchell even said that her and Cheryl talked about it in free agency, that it was maybe like a middle of the season thing once she kind of gets, acclimated and kind of gets her feet wet, and gets a little bit more familiar with being that point guard or that offense initiator, because she hasn't had to do that so far in her career. So I think that she'll maybe end up being in that role depending on how Lindsay Allen does. But to your point, it's been ever since Lindsay Whalen, they've been looking for a Lindsay Whalen, and that's not easy to find. But there's a lot of moving parts this year.
And they're they're not going to get a Lindsay Whalen. This, this is like their Lindsay Whalen is probably still in college.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. When it comes to, let's say the Lynx do finish as maybe a bottom 2 team or bottom 4 team, let's say this year. If they do get one of those top picks, do you think that, maybe one of those targets of maybe Caitlin Clark or Paige Beckers or, insert somebody else here, it's going to be, if they all come out, it's going to be a pretty talented draft class next year. Do you think that they end up coming out or maybe staying in the college game?
It's really difficult to answer that because of the influence NIL has now, because I could see a player like Caitlin Clark wanting to stay all 5 years. She seems like she loves college and loves Iowa and she's making money, so maybe she does want to stay. But then when it comes to Paige, also having covered her in my old job when I was covering UConn, I think that's an interesting difference because she obviously has these 2 knee injuries that she's coming off of. So maybe that changes her calculus a lot more than maybe it was pre-injury. The idea of her playing in Minnesota, I'm sure, would be so exciting for Lynx fans and for Minnesota basketball diehards. But I mean, it's really hard to predict that far out in the future just because we don't know what year these kids are all going to leave, and then how that impacts where the Lynx are going to finish in the lottery odds and everything. But I do think one thing with Paige that I think about is she wants to win a national title so bad. Obviously, I think Caitlin Clark does too, but I could see Paige, if her health allows, wanting to stay maybe until she wins one. But that's no inside information. That's just kind of having watched from afar and picking up on things that I think matter to her. But yeah, there's a lot of great talent regardless, not even just talking about those 2, guards that are going to be in these next few draft classes, 2024, 2025, we're already so incredibly hyped about. So I feel like if the Lynx are going to be in that lottery conversation for the next year or 2 or however long, then they're going to have the opportunity to pick some really great talent across the board. I mean, this is just this could be a really game-changing set of draft classes for the WNBA.
And it's kind of a good time for, I mean, you don't want to, as an organization, they don't want to be going through this, but it's almost a good time to be doing, or to, have this upcoming draft class, because you're going to have the likes of Aerial Powers and Natalie Chano. You're going to have their contracts off the books next year. So they can start to kind of, get those contracts if they want to, get them off the books or get them cheaper than what they're at right now. And then kind of, moving forward, kind of, replenish that with a little bit of cheaper contracts, and then maybe look out into free agency and bring in somebody else. So it's almost a good timing for it to happen. I know the Lynx do have an end goal, and they're not gonna publicly say that, but they have it all figured out. I'm pretty confident in that, as every franchise thinks they do, to having a plan and think they have it figured out. But it makes sense. I mean, you're going to have a down year to kind of take a step back and kind of take inventory and kind of analyze everything. This is a good year to do it, especially after coming off of, missing the playoffs last year, and obviously helps your lottery odds with the 2-year, the 2-year record total. So that's one thing I think a lot of people forget about, is it's not just how you do 1 year, it's how you do over 2 years. So that's another thing to look at when we're looking at the lottery. But I do think too that when it comes to Paige and Caitlin, I maybe more so Paige, I could almost see it if she's on the fence, seeing someone like a Minnesota, or seeing a team like Minnesota being right at the top. I mean, let's say Minnesota wins the lottery or something like that, having them be the top team, that could maybe persuade her a little bit. Let's say if she does have a good year at UConn, maybe they do win the title. Maybe she's ready to make that jump. I could see that maybe pushing her a little bit just with that tie, but I don't know. It, like you said, the NIL kind of throws another, loop into everything, or another hurdle into the whole situation. So it's really hard to tell. So they could make more money in college probably, or take advantage of that time and then come into the WNBA and make more money. But it'll be interesting. I don't know. It's a good year to have a bad year. Let's maybe say that, but for more than just Minnesota. Some other teams I know are down there as well that would have the same goal. But yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. Kind of going back to the Napheesa Collier, stuff that we had talked about with her being a leader. How do you think that she'll take over being the new face of this team and just kind of, taking over that leadership role, being the face of the team and being the best player on the team, kind of that whole package?
Yeah, well, I think this has been the expectation for so long, basically since her breakout rookie year, that it was going to be her that was going to be the next face once Sil retired. So it's not like maybe some other, okay, not to necessarily, I don't know if they're a great comparison, but like Jewel Lloyd, it was a little bit more like, oh, well, Stewie's gone, so it's Jewel's team, and Clea Copper, we didn't know that Chicago was going to lose all of their other key pieces like they did. But I think the writing was on the wall a lot more with Napheesa. So it's something that they've all very intentionally discussed and worked on, and she's been able to kind of process for years now. And I do think the fact that she's coming off of barely having played last year and having this life-changing year with becoming a mother, and then she comes back, and I think one thing that we didn't really touch on yet, I think, is that there's a new offensive system. She's asked to be doing different things, playing more on the perimeter than she was before. And everything changes now that Sil's not there, but on both ends, on offense and defensively. So the fact that they're doing this more like spread and attack offense is something that and then she's, spearheading, it from a basketball standpoint, being relied on as a scorer and as like the go-to option, but then also, from a leadership perspective, I do think that all just is going to take time. And so it's like a weird balance though, because like we have maybe kind of low expectations for the team, but we have high expectations, or the franchise even has high expectations for Napheesa. So I think there is like a middle ground where they'll be able to figure out, there are ways to kind of move this forward. So I feel like at the end of this year, if she's able to kind of take a step forward in both her game, kind of get more comfortable after having missed all that time, and then taking those steps as a leader, and then kind of bring along some of those other pieces that are going to be part of this quote unquote rebuild for the Lynx longer term, then I think that would be kind of a successful year. But I just think it's going to take a little bit more time, given the basketball changes, given the fact that Napheesa didn't really play. Like, we could basically throw out last year. She played 4 games at the end of the season. So I do feel like she knows what it's going to take, but it's just it's a little bit of a learning curve. And we'll be able to assess it better at the end of the season or in a few months. But it's Cheryl, she makes it clear where you stand with her, I feel like. And she's made it clear this whole time that Napheesa is who they see as the, the person that the baton has been passed to, and that it's on her to really lead this team moving forward. And it's interesting timing just because of the fact that she didn't play last year, basically. But I think Napheesa is ready to take up that mantle.
It's almost kind of the same thing with Sylvia Fowles. Now, Sil was in maybe a little bit of an advanced portion of her career than what Napheesa is right now. But Sil, when all of those other veterans from the dynasty team, when they left, Cheryl said it's on Sil. Like, this is Sil's team. And she admitted that she's never had to be that leader because, well, when she came to Minnesota, she was kind of the fifth option. Well, not necessarily the fifth option, but you know what I mean? Like, when it came to the leadership. And it took some time for her to kind of get into that role. And then once, right before she retired, or that last season, everybody talked about how great of a leader she was and kind of, stepping into that role. So I think it'll be kind of similar to Fee. It might take a year to kind of establish that and really kind of learn how to do that and how to be a leader and vocal leader and just lead by example and everything that comes in that regard. But I do believe that with she had the first 2 games of the year she had a strong year, and then or strong performances, and then in the third game against Phoenix, she kind of took a step back, and Cheryl said after the game, like, that can't happen. Like, she needs to be more aggressive, and she needs to, be more assertive. And that's part of the learning curve. Like, there's no not nights off for a leader, for the best player of the team. You have that pressure constantly, and it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but like the whole team this year, it's going to be a learning process, and it'll be up and down. So it'll be interesting to follow. But
yeah, one thing that I saw that quote from Cheryl, and it kind of just reminded me, and I'm sure it's not, this is not like super novel thinking, but it reminded me of how Gino Auriemma talks about his leaders on his teams, where like when you're the leader and you're the go-to, like the best player, it's like you cannot have an off night any night. Like the buck stops with you. So, and Napheesa played that role for a lot of those UConn teams, and so I do feel like in theory that should prepare her, even though it is a different level and the demands of a pro are different obviously than college, but she has been in that role before collegiately, and so it's something that that maybe that can help her navigate it too.
Yeah, that is something that Cheryl even said during training camp, when like one of the first days of training camp, she was asked about Fee taking over that leadership role, and she's like, Fee's always there for us on the court, but now there's no off days as a leader either. She said you can't be here one day being a leader and then not be here the next day. So it's kind of that same, like you said, that same mentality and that same style of coaching that both of them have, and that's why they're two of the best to ever do it. So I think that it'll end up happening, and Fee feels comfortable too. I think in this offseason, or in this offense, in the schemes that Minnesota runs for maybe the first time in her career, it's kind of similar to what she talked about what she ran in college. So she's comfortable now. Now it's about kind of everything else following with it. So it'll come. It's just like I said, it'll be a little bit of a learning process for everybody. When it does come to the Lynx this season, what do you think that will end up happening with Minnesota? Do you believe that they probably will be maybe around what they did last year, maybe back in the lottery? What are your expectations for the Lynx?
Yeah, I would say at this point, I feel like expectations would be that they miss the playoffs, but I feel like the best case scenario is that Napheesa steps up as the leader that the organization wants her to be. They're able to get some really great growth from the rookies, especially Diamond Miller. I don't really subscribe to the whole like overreaction about rookies struggling in like their first week of the pros or even their first season, but I definitely would not really read that much into them struggling in their first week. So I feel like maybe Diamond will get her feet under her more as the season goes on, and she could have a really strong end to her rookie campaign. But and then they're going to just have to figure out, based off this season and also looking ahead, who makes sense to try and bring back, because they, as you mentioned, they have so many different free agents that they can either pursue keeping or re-signing in some capacity or moving on from. So Kayla McBride and Powers and Achanwa, that's a lot of decisions to make. I guess Achanwa, with her maternity leave is kind of a different situation, but they have a ton of free agents, so they're going to just have to figure out, based off of what they see from this year and what they've seen for the last few years, who makes sense to bring back. So I feel like it'll be both a bit of a learning process that they could use this year, but then also getting some growth from the players that they expect will be back long term, and then they'll see what happens with the draft either way. But I really do feel like it's all about growth in the future for them, and they've come out and said it. This is not something that's shockingly new to say or breaking news, but I think if they can, I think the end goal though is like, even if you aren't a team that's going to make the playoffs, you still don't want to be an easy out. So as long as they're the Lynx are still competing and giving teams a tough go, I'm sure that would be something that Cheryl would want, as opposed to just being a team that people can roll over easily. But right. I think her teams, even last year we saw, like, if things come together kind of later on, then they have that capacity to do that and play higher to their ceiling as they kind of get their groove going.
I feel like this offseason was one that it laid the foundation for those pieces that, Diamond Miller and Napheesa Collier and how they want to shape the team. Next year is going to be the year where it's going to be that those decisions and that foundation, you start to branch off of it and start to build up now. Just because it will be a big, decision-making offseason and how they want to progress as a franchise moving forward. So they're still kind of in that in between right now where they have those contracts. They maybe want to get rid of them. They can't until the end of the year. So it's, you got to just kind of wait it out and develop the pieces you have. And then next year kind of really take a fine tooth comb and figure out what you want to do with the whole roster. But hopefully we, at that time, we have maybe a couple teams that are going to be announced that are potentially going to be included in expansion, maybe roster expansions. I wishful thinking, but
we'll have to see. I have almost no expectations because I feel like if we have expectations for what that looks like, and it might not necessarily work out. So we shall see.
We've been given dates and expectations in the past, and those have been just pushed off. So we'll just wait.
Well, they'll announce it one day and we're like, oh, it's actually happening.
Right. So to end each podcast, I've typically thrown just kind of a couple random like rapid fire questions at people. So is that okay if I maybe just throw a couple your way?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Hopefully I'll keep my responses rapid.
Yeah. Hey, they don't have to be rapid, but you can go as long as you want. When it comes to MVP, who do you think will be MVP by the end of the season?
I guess I'll go with my my preseason prediction was Brianna Stewart. And I struggled with this because I don't know if I fully believe a quote unquote super team. Like, if it's a true super team, is there really one clear person who's the MVP? But I feel like regardless of that philosophical argument, the way that MVP voting typically breaks down is that it's the best, it's like the best player on the best team in the league, like standings wise. So I kind of deduced based off that, in my mind, I thought the Liberty might end up with the best record, and then Brianna Stewart would be the best player on that team. And so far, that looks pretty good. She scored 45 points, and yesterday she almost had like a 5.5 block, 5 steal, 5 assists, 5 rebound game, 5 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'll stick with that, but the Aces might have something to say about that. But also it's like hard because one night for them it's Jackie Young that's going off, another night it's Asia Wilson and Chelsea Gray and Candace is on there, like they have, and Kelsey Plum, like they have so many different weapons too. So that one's even harder. I feel like the Liberty so far, a lot of it's funneled through Stewie, but that could change. So my very long answer to a rapid fire question.
That's perfect. That's perfect. When it comes to your surprise this season, whether it's player, coach, team, whatever that may be, is it Chicago, like you mentioned, or you mentioned earlier, or what kind of do you think will be your surprise that nobody expected by the end of the year?
So I guess to kind of touch on something we haven't talked about yet, I kind of put this in my preseason predictions that I thought Shakira Austin could be an all-star this year. And now I'm like convinced of that. I mean, I think she's playing great, and that progression from year 1 to year 2 has been really noticeable. So I don't know if that's really that surprising, like given what we've seen so far in the season. I thought Alicia Gray would get all-star because she should have gotten it last year, in my opinion. And then I said maybe, Shakira Austin and Alyssa Smith could too. But actually, the way Shakira's played so far, it's like, I mean, she's been so like tremendous offensively, and obviously her defense has always been good. So I don't know if that counts, but I'll go with that.
I like it. What's your favorite memory or moment that you've had while covering women's basketball, whether it's just college game, WNBA, anything? What's your favorite memory that kind of stands out to you, if you have just one?
Oh man, that is okay. So probably, so the Iowa South Carolina game. I wasn't really, so I was covering the LSU Virginia Tech game. So it was a little bit different because I was like finishing up writing about that. I wasn't like as hands-on covering Iowa South Carolina, but like that was just like such a crazy experience of I did not think Iowa was going to win at all. Like I was so convinced South Carolina was going to win the whole thing. So just and to be there in Dallas with the crowd and everything and to see that happen in real time was like it was kind of surreal, but I don't know. I mean, that was like something I'll probably never forget.
Mm-hmm.
But I also and then I did cover I was in at the Seattle regional when Caitlin Clark had her 40-point triple double. That was pretty like that's another thing I'll probably like not forget because that was like literally history. And then was this last year the NC State UConn game that went to was it double overtime and like that was just one of the best games I've ever like covered live with the atmosphere and everything. That was at Bridgeport. Um and yeah, that was a pretty incredible game too. So um and then yeah, like I don't know, there's been a lot. So
Yeah.
I didn't really fixate on one, but and then even honestly to see I wasn't unfortunately didn't get to see the end of the WNBA finals because I was in Australia for the World Cup, but um I bet, when the Aces won, that was I wish I could have seen that live too. I love being able to see, the champions be crowned live. So like
Right.
LSU seeing that this year, last year was cool. South Carolina, like how meaningful it was for them to finally win after, being so close the year before. Like that was a really cool experience to see and um, okay, Rob, this is really, dragging on now this answer, but like
No,
I
that's
talked
all great.
I talked with Candace Parker. I think it was like before she had that moment with Aaliyah Boston, like in the crowd, and like, or maybe it was I can't remember if it was before or afterward, but yeah, it's just like little moments like that, and
Yeah.
I just love like it's always tough to see like the losing team in that moment of defeat, but then the crowning achievement for the winning team. So
Mhm.
I've been really lucky. I've been able to cover some. Oh, the World Cup that'd be a good one too, like the USA winning. So okay,
Yeah.
that's five, but um, yeah, I've been lucky to see some great basketball live
That's
and
awesome.
be able to cover some good stuff like that.
Oh, those are great. That's awesome. Those moments are always fun just to, like you said, it's tough to see the losing team, but it's even better maybe. I don't know if that sounds weird, but better to see the winning team, not only the arena, the fans, just families, everybody's so happy and
Definitely.
it's fun. And especially the celebratory, if you join a celebratory, like after the game, if you go into the locker room, that those moments
Yeah,
are just talking to people in that atmosphere is gold, especially when you're when you're a writer. That's where you get a lot of great stuff. But yeah, that no, that's really cool. But no, that was perfect. That's all I had for random questions. So that was, I guess maybe they're not so much rapid fire, they're just kind of random questions, but
yeah.
I call them rapid fire questions and whatever. I don't know. But it's always cool to hear different perspectives and different experiences from people in that space. But well, cool. Alexa, thank you for joining. That's really all I had for you. I appreciate you joining and talking about all things, college basketball, WNBA, Minnesota Lynx. A great conversation and I enjoyed having you on. So thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and I'm sure we can chat more in the coming years, probably as we see this organization take on a new chapter. And like you said, like they know they're an organization that prides itself on its championship standards. So I don't have any I would not be concerned if I'm a Lynx fan that they're not going to, be back and be a really great team. It just might take some time, but that's what these things do. They do take time, but
Hmm.
they're not a team that's going to languish and missing the playoffs or anything like that. So I do feel like Lynx fans wait it out, and you'll probably be in good shape in the coming years.
Hmm. Yeah.
So we'll have plenty to talk about then.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we'll have to circle back and see how right or wrong we were, and maybe
Yes.
it'll in a little while. So, well, once again, thank you. Enjoy the rest of the basketball season, and thanks again for all your coverage, and looking forward to more to come.
Yeah, right back at you.
Thank you all for listening to another episode of Hitting the Hardwood. I also want to give a thank you to Alexa for joining the podcast this week. It was great talking to her about all things, WNBA, and now that we're underway with the new season, it was great hearing her insight, and I thank her for taking the time out of her busy schedule to join me on the podcast this week. As I do every week, I want to give a shout out to the man behind the scenes, Jeremy Rushing, for producing this podcast and making sure I don't sound like a crazier person than I actually am. I also want to ask you to, if you are able to, please support this podcast, support Hitting the Hardwood, by visiting patreon.com/Hitting the Hardwood. That's where you can find a lot of the exclusive perks and much more for being part of our Patreon community. One of the things I try and offer to our patrons is exclusive stuff that they aren't going to find anywhere else. Exclusive information, exclusive stories, exclusive reactions, news, information that you won't see anywhere else in my stories and all my content that I produce to everywhere else. So if you could, please check that out. That's once again patreon.com/Hitting the Hardwood. I also want to give 2 shout outs to our partners, Homage and Better Edge. Homage has a lot of great vintage gear that you can get, a lot of clothing that I wear regularly, whether it's Minnesota Lynx gear, WNBA gear, anything else really. They have a lot of really cool vintage gear, even stuff as I don't want to say basic, but kind of basic as a Lynx logo tee, which is one of my favorite tees that I actually own right now, and I'm actually wearing it right now. Extremely comfy, and I really love it. And then the other one is Better Edge. Please go check out betteredge.com. That's BETTOR edge.com. You can come compete against myself. You can come compete against others. Anything from $1 to however much you want to bet. You can come join pick'em leagues. You can join wager leagues. You can join a lot of stuff. And it's a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it not only this season but in years past. So please go check that out. And if you do want to check out Better Edge, please visit betteredge.com/links, and that is where you'll get a free $20 to play with. You can't afford not to. So go check them out, BETTOR edge.com. That's betteredge.com. Once again, I want to thank you all for joining the podcast. A lot of great stuff that was talked throughout this podcast, and more to come. I'm really excited about another guest that I have coming up next week. And some more guests here in the future. So once again, thank you, and I will talk to you guys next week.